I will invite the Honorable the Premier to grace us with prayers.
Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech Thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Legislative Assembly now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations, for the glory of Thy name, and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex officio members, members of the Legislative Assembly, the Chief Justice and members of the Judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for Thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be Thy name. Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make His face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of His countenance upon us and give us peace, now and always. Amen.
Please be seated. Proceedings in this Honorable Legislative Assembly is now resumed.
Reading the proclamation. Proclamation number 2 of 2020 by His Excellency Martin Roper, Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, Governor of the Cayman Islands, whereby Section 83(1) of the Constitution of the Cayman Islands provides that the sessions of the Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands shall be held at such places and begin at such times as the Governor may from time to time by proclamation appoint. Now therefore I, Martin Roper, OBE, Governor of the Cayman Islands, by virtue of the powers conferred upon me by Section 83(1) of the Constitution of the Cayman Islands, hereby proclaim that a session of the Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands shall begin and be held at the Legislative Assembly Building, Georgetown, Grand Cayman, at 10 a.m. on the 14th day of October 2020, and shall thereafter continue until such date and time as the Legislative Assembly may adjourn thereto. Given under my hand and the public seal of the Cayman Islands at Georgetown and the island of Grand Cayman, this 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord 2020, and the 69th year of the reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Administration of oaths or affirmations?
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of Messages and Announcements.
Thank you. Honourable members, as you all are aware, this is my first time in the chair since we, as a country, have been dealing with our response to COVID-19. While I was not in the chair in this Honourable House, I still had responsibilities that I had to respond to from all quarters of this country, but in particular the District of West Bay and including my Commonwealth Parliamentary Association responsibilities. First of all, I want to give thanks to Almighty God for His unrelenting mercies on our beloved Cayman Islands, and not forget our enduring gratitude to our praying population who have prayed and sought God's blessing without ceasing during this time of concern, particularly for the welfare of all in these islands and outside as well. Personally, I believe in prayers. Further, the Word of God says, prayer without works are empty and futile. And so today, I want to take this time to give thanks to all who worked diligently in the early days and still do during this pandemic, giving their best and selfless efforts and time, often at a cost to themselves and their families, to keep these islands and those who live here safe. I want to particularly commend all our first responders, essential and frontline workers for their hard work and selfless endeavors. My attention now focuses on the exemplary works of the Premier and his staff, the Minister of Health and his staff, other members of Cabinet, the councillors, and all members of this House, and indeed all the staff of the Health Services Authority who bore the brunt of protecting and caring for the people of these islands. My thanks also go to the members of the community who heeded all the government-provided advice, regulations, and protocols put in place to ensure that COVID-19 is neutralized in these islands. It is their actions and cooperation with required protocol that ultimately ensure that COVID-19 is kept at bay within the islands. Honourable members, I have always said that the government could not repay the generosity given by the private sector. I personally witnessed the many organizations and individuals who were and are still on the ground providing much needed assistance to those in need. It would also be remiss of me not to mention the work of the churches, as they too played a pivotal role in assisting many in need. The soup kitchens, the food drives. I personally witnessed several churches with lines, Assemblies of God here in town and others that worked and gave, donated to people in those very early days. It is with utmost appreciation I express heartfelt thanks to the civil service personnel who played a major role in providing the necessary services required for the survival of these islands, and which benefited my constituents. In that group, special thanks should be recorded to Mrs. Gloria Macfield Nixon and her staff, all of the chief officers, Radio Cayman staff, the staff of GIS, Mrs. Jewel Evans, Lindsay, and the staff of the Public Service Pension Board. I want to take the opportunity to recognize the efforts of Ms. Gloria, as I often had to call her during the late hours of the evening for assistance for someone, whether it was West Bay or elsewhere, while she was out on the road assisting individuals. She was still out, I should say, on the road. I would like to extend a special thanks to Mr. Strand Borden, Chief Officer in the Ministry of Tourism, and the Director of Tourism, Mrs. Rosa Harris, and their staff. Members, for those that doubted the valuable contribution of the tourism industry, hotels, cruise, and other aspects of tourism, they ought to acknowledge the valuable contribution that is derived from this pillar of our economy today. While I have mentioned some names, I also want to include Mrs. Paulinda Mendoza-Williams and Ms. Tamara Hurlston and their staff. I do not know how many members had the opportunity to see what took place in the early stages of our lockdown, but I can only say that the staff of the NAU unit have the patience of Job, as they endured cussing and verbal abuse coming from the lines of people waiting on the system for assistance. But that assistance came through the Premier's office. as this is part of his ministry, and the counselor, Mr. Harris. Honorable members, we must never forget the role played thus far by our hardworking, conscientious teachers and those other educational personnel who attended the wellness of the minds of our children during that time. At the Sir John A. Cumber Primary School, the principal and her deputy worked during the shutdown, and their contribution cannot be glossed over merely by my simple thanks and mention here this morning. They worked from giving food to making sure children had computers in my district. I also want to thank Mr. Derek De Silva for a contribution he made to assist me in my constituency, and which others benefited from. And I also want to say thanks to the Colonel's Supermarket, I still call it, for their efforts and their grant of $1,200 or $1,250, whatever it was, to members to assist people in the community. Also, we ought not to forget that as elected officials, we have staff, some of whom are here in this Legislative Assembly, and those in our district offices who play their role in assisting the general public in so many different ways. I must put on record my appreciation for my staff who made themselves available during our COVID-19 response, putting themselves at risk while assisting many in the public with completing the required forms for pension withdrawal and NAU assistance, and delivering and helping me to deliver food and other assistance to the public in need in the District of West Bay, particularly in my constituency. This task took many of them well into the late hours of the night, including myself, and my heartfelt thanks and appreciation to them for this tremendous service. So far, we have been spared by Almighty God from the severity of impact that so many around the world are facing and have had to deal with almost continually. Let us thank our government for all that they have given and continue to give, and we pray, continue to pray that the effect of COVID on our beloved islands will continue to remain mild until a cure or a vaccine becomes viable. Thank you, and God bless our Cayman Islands.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports. Freedom of Information Law 2020 revision, Freedom of Information General Amendment Regulations 2020, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Attorney General.
The Honorable the Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek leave of the House to lay on the table Freedom of Information General Amendment Regulations 2020.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, there is a motion that will follow later on, which is related to those regulations, and at that stage I propose to speak on the regulations. Thank you.
Development and Planning Law 2017 revision, Draft Building Code Amendment Regulations 2020, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure.
The Honourable the Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg the leave of the House to lay on the table the Draft Building Code Amendment Regulations 2020.
So ordered. Is the minister speaking there too?
Mr. Speaker, there is a motion to follow, and I will speak to that, inclusive of these amendments. Thank you.
Cayman Islands Government, Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, Strategic Plan 2021 to 2025, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honorable the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the 2021 to 2025 Strategic Plan of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development.
So ordered. Is the minister speaking there too?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a diverse set of stakeholders that rely on information that is produced by the Ministry of Finance. The Cabinet, members of the Legislative Assembly, local and international businesses, and the general public rely on budgets, financial reports, economic forecasts, statistical reports, and other fiscal policies and guidance that are delivered by this ministry. This vital information is used to make key and informed fiscal and economic decisions, which are all geared towards building a stronger economy and a community that supports families, businesses, and the most vulnerable. This strategic plan provides stakeholders with the assurance that the ministry aims to align its resources with the priorities of stakeholders in order to pursue shared goals and attain meaningful results. Mr. Speaker, this strategic plan establishes the mission and vision statements and values of the ministry. The mission statement is to foster sustainable growth, economic growth, and international competitiveness through effective and accountable use of public finances that enhance the quality of life in the Cayman Islands. The vision statement, Mr. Speaker, is an innovative ministry that drives excellence through timely, informed, and accountable decision making. The four ministry values are: 1, transparency and accountability. We will take responsibility for our actions that are transparent and accountable when dealing with others. Secondly, integrity. We conduct our work ethically and truthfully in a manner that creates confidence and trust in those we work with and report to. Third, teamwork and collaboration. We achieve common goals through successful working relationships with those who may have diverse ideas, strengths, and cultural backgrounds. And fourth, respect. We treat everyone with respect, fairness, and dignity, and value the ideas and opinions of those with whom we work. Mr. Speaker, the strategic plan also clearly sets out 4 objectives, along with initiatives that we will undertake over the next 5 years. The first strategic objective is to take on leadership for the crafting of a government-wide economic development strategy. The initiatives that the ministry will undertake to achieve this objective are: 1, re-examine, define, and redesign the ministry's economic development role. 2, work with our public and private sector stakeholders and cabinet to craft an integrated strategy for the development of the economy of the Cayman Islands. 3, develop a more strategic and structured approach to government procurement, as well as reviewing and improving procurement processes. And 4, to help build capacity across the public sector to support a collaborative and impactful economic development strategy. The second strategic objective is to improve public and private sector decision-making, collaboration, and resilience. The initiatives that the ministry will undertake to achieve this objective, Mr. Speaker, are: 1, to develop statistical information that is tailored to the unique needs of various stakeholder groups. 2, to strengthen statistical capacity and data literacy in public and private sector organizations and within the Caymanian population. 3, develop a framework and work with stakeholders to improve data collection and data integrity and promote a data-driven culture. And 4, review and enhance the government-wide risk management framework and plan. The third strategic objective is to strengthen government's managing for results environment and culture. The initiatives that the Ministry will undertake to achieve this objective are to develop a managing for results policy together with the supporting implementing guidance. 2, modernize the business practices, decision-making processes, and tools used to support results-based management and accountability. 3, implement a strategy for building capacity and evolving the government managing for results culture. 4, develop and implement a government-wide results-based management and accountability framework for assessing financial and non-financial performance. And 5, review and enhance the reporting processes and tools for budgeting, revenue forecasting, stress testing, and planning. And fourth and final strategic objective is to become the workplace of choice for civil servants within the government. The initiatives that we will undertake and pursue are: 1, champion new approaches, tools, and materials that will foster a workplace culture of mutual trust, respect, and dignity for everyone. 2, embed a culture of constant improvement, innovation, and proactivity within the ministry. 3, to develop a coordinated learning and development plan for the ministry to build capacity and guide career development and advancement. And 4, strengthen leadership, decision-making, and communication skills in the management levels of the ministry. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the stakeholders who gave their time to participate and contribute to the development of this strategic plan. They include the elected member for Northside and the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, the elected member for Bordentown West, the chairman and CEO of Cayman Finance, the president and CEO of the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce, the CEOs of Cineco and CIDB, the chief advisor of the Office of the Deputy Governor, special consultant to the Office of the Premier, the financial attaché of the Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs, and the financial secretary and chief officer, management, and staff of the ministry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah. (2019) Annual Report, Pathways to Strengthen Prosperity, Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, Government of the Cayman Islands, Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, financial statements for the year ended 31st of December 2019, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure.
The Honorable the Minister of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise and beg leave of the House to lay on the table the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure financial statements for the year ended 31st December 2019 and the 2019 Annual Report, Pathways to Strength and Prosperity for the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sarge. Mr. Speaker, let me first commend His Excellency the Governor, the Honorable Premier, and other members of this Honorable House for their leadership and solidarity in dealing with the coronavirus pandemic we currently face. These Cayman Islands stand at an enviable position today as a result of the proactive measures taken by the government to contain the number of local COVID-19 cases. Early lockdown efforts, widespread testing and contact tracing, quarantining of travelers, good communication, and the provision of the necessary resources to strengthen the economic and social systems are some of the effective strategies that our government implemented and continue to carry out to deal with the virus and its fallout. The residents of these islands must also be commended for their general adherence to the public health regulations, which now allow us to have some level of normalcy as we go about our daily lives. And I want to encourage the people of the Cayman Islands to continue to be on alert and follow the relevant guidelines, as we are clearly not out of the woods. Please allow me, Mr. Speaker, to express my gratitude to our frontline workers who have gone above and beyond over the past few months and continue to be central to us managing the pandemic, and we owe them a debt of gratitude which we cannot repay. I'd also like to commend and thank the various departments and agencies of government, including those under my ministry: Facilities Management, Public Works Department, Department of Planning, and the Cayman Islands Center for Business Development, that supported the emergency and now our recovery efforts. Mr. Speaker, turning my attention now to the matter at hand, this morning I present the 2019 annual reports for the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. The theme of the annual report, Pathways to Strength and Prosperity, captures the essence of my ministry's key focus during the period covered. It will be evident when you review the document that the ministry sought to introduce an effective e-process of doing business across government, strengthen our information technology infrastructure, as well as supported and facilitated commercial activities across these islands. The report is for the financial period from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, and it provides information on a wide cross-section of our work, including the operations, trends, plans, as well as the achievements of the ministry. The Auditor General audited and issued an unqualified opinion on the financial statements of the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure for the same period, January 1st to December 31st, 2019. An unqualified opinion means that the financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the ministry as at 31st December 2019 and its financial performance and cash flows for the very same period. Mr. Speaker, this government has placed priority on fiscal responsibility, and I can confidently state that my ministry's fiscal affairs are in line with this priority. I must take the opportunity to applaud our finance team for their diligence and hard work, which contributed to the ministry's receipt of 2 awards from the Public Accounts Committee, chaired by the member from Northside, for achieving unqualified audits for the years 2018 and 2019. Mr. Speaker, there were significant achievements within the ministry's agencies and the departments for the 2019 financial year. The Department of Commerce and Investment, DCI, continued to blaze trails with the achievements of new milestones while taking on additional responsibilities. The department's major successes in 2019 were centered on 4 main areas, Mr. Speaker: supervision of designated non-financial business and professions, the DNFBPs, changes to policy, talent management, and improving efficiencies. Mr. Speaker, the anti-money laundering regulations imposes a duty on DCI to supervise compliance by the DNFBPs to relevant anti-money laundering and terrorist financing laws. In executing its duties, DCI conducts on-site and off-site reviews of the records and operations of all DNFBPs. In 2019, Mr. Speaker, the department carried out 29 inspections of licensees in the real estate sector, as well as dealers in precious metals and precious stones. The inspections were followed by detailed reports to each licensee, which identified areas for compliance, along with recommendations on how to address the deficiencies. To positively engage and assist the industry in their journey to full compliance, DCI delivered 8 workshops, 12 compliance meetings, 4 industry meetings, and 35 sensitization visits during that financial year. Mr. Speaker, 4 new board policies became effective in 2019. These concerned the supervisory role of the DCI for DNFBPs and its other responsibilities under our anti-money laundering framework. The policies also address money lending enterprises such as payday loan providers and the licensing period for developers making applications under the Local Companies Control Law. During the year under review, the department processed and issued over 11,500 trade and business licenses. These included 3,133 new licenses, as well as renewals and amendments. In an effort to increase business efficiency, the department also carried out major improvements to its online platform. Mr. Speaker, the pathway to greater strength and prosperity requires a team approach to work, and DCI continues to exemplify this through employee engagement and talent management. In 2019, the department was awarded the Gold Accreditation status by Investors in People, a UK public body that represents international standards for people management. Mr. Speaker, this is a rare feat for any organization assessed for the first time, and in a testament to the department's efforts in promoting positive staff welfare through training, development, and innovation. Mr. Speaker, I now pause to congratulate them on achieving that award, and also for being shortlisted for 3 upcoming 2020 Investors in People's Awards, Employer of the Year, and Employee Engagement and Leader of the Year. I have no doubt that they will be successful. Mr. Speaker, now turning to the Department of Planning. The team continued to refine the online planning system to offer enhanced features. The planning portal now facilitates most of the department's planning activities, from the issuance of certificates of occupancy to payment collections. It has reduced the need for members of the public to attend the planning counter and has allowed technical personnel to focus on the substantive area of work rather than administrative duties. Mr. Speaker, one of the main advantages of the online planning system is the ability to track process. Documents entering work queues are date stamped, they have a movement trail that is auditable, and there is backup capabilities to ensure that documents are not misplaced or deleted. These features, Mr. Speaker, have delivered significant improvements to staff and customers, including timeliness of service and an enhanced customer service experience. Mr. Speaker, significant progress was made by the department last year on the Builders Amendment Bill 2019. This is an important piece of legislation that will enable the full implementation of the Builders Law, which will promote greater industry accountability through changes in the categories of registration for contractors. Mr. Speaker, the Planned Cayman Development Framework underwent its first round of public consultation in 2019 and generated significant interest and participation with over 300 people submitting formal responses. This is the first development plan drawn up in 20 years that looks at the future infrastructure demands for Grand Cayman, such as new schools, roads, and public transport improvements required in the years ahead, as well, Mr. Speaker, as balancing the protection of the environment with ongoing development. Our infrastructure has a direct impact on our business communities and families, and so, Mr. Speaker, the consultations are important for the public to have a say and to ensure that it is sustainable in the future. We are now moving to the area-by-area planning phase with the aim of covering the island, Grand Cayman, over 5 years. The first plan will be created for the 7 Mile Beach corridor to positively deal with both the development pressures there, as well as ensuring that the island is maximizing the economic opportunities available. During the financial year, Mr. Speaker, development continued to grow with marked increase in all sectors of the Department of Planning, and as follows: approval of 748 projects valued over $890 million, issuance of 1,249 planning permits valued over $470 million, the issuance of 435 certificate of occupancies valued at over $205 million, and approval of 11,324 inspections out of a total of 12,267, and this was an approval rating of 92.3% in 2019. Mr. Speaker, I must thank the Planning Department team for all of their hard work and dedication in supporting and strengthening the construction sector. Moving on to the Information Technology and E-Service, the Computer Service Department in 2019 continued the implementation of an information technology framework to facilitate delivery of services, project management, applications, and operations. The team of 66 employees are a driving force behind the government's strategy to leverage technology to support and enable business units to deliver more efficient services. Mr. Speaker, they currently support core revenue earning systems that collect and record approximately $700 million per year on behalf of the public treasury. This includes the support and maintenance of 88 applications and 76 websites. For the period under review, the Computer Services Department Service Desk raised and disseminated over 39,000 logs, addressed over 59,000 telephone calls, and upgraded or replaced some 1,200 machines. In addition to technical support, the team also played a crucial role in various IT infrastructure projects, including the implementation of the disaster recovery system for added resilience to the Cayman Islands government's revenue generating system, the installation of communication circuits to improve network communication for the Fire Service Department, the facilitation of the Customs and Border Control and work mergers, and the upgrade of servers and network infrastructure in Grand Cayman and Cayman Brac. Mr. Speaker, these were among several projects undertaken which you can peruse in the annual report. Last year, Mr. Speaker, E-Government Services Unit completed significant work on the National Identification System with the Register of Natural Persons, which is a key prerequisite project to uniquely document all residents of our islands electronically. Work also progressed on the government's X-Road initiative, which is crucial to the development of various online systems that augment our overall system security. In 2019, Mr. Speaker, e-services continued to expand online services. The cargo and customs process, for example, has over 5,000 monthly declarations. 92% are now completed through the online process. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, over 96% of company registrations, annual reports, and directors' changes are now being processed digitally. The online criminal record certificate process was one of the e-government services early projects. They have also supported the Department of Vehicle and Driver's License with the implementation of text message reminders for the expiring vehicle licenses. Nearly 8,000 reminders were sent out during the first full month of operation, and the system continues to assist the public by reminding them of expiring documents in a timely manner. More recently, Mr. Speaker, the General Registry commenced its rollout of e-services to various clients. This is part of an initial launch, which will be expanded through further development. Mr. Speaker, the e-government allows us to deliver more services within shorter periods than would be otherwise possible using conventional service delivery methods. The small unit is making a big impact as we journey along the digital sphere through strength and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, you will see from the report that under the Facilities Management Department, work progressed with the procurement of a 100 kilowatt modular solar panel system, which will provide covered parking for areas of the government administration building and stations for the charging of electric vehicles. Upgrades were also made to our closed-circuit television system by directly linking it to the 911 Emergency Response Center to ensure that the staff can evacuate the government administration building in a safe and timely manner during emergency events. The team has developed the capacity for virtual training to enable new occupants to become familiar with the exit routes. Last year, Mr. Speaker, the government administration building underwent several internal configurations as new offices moved in and other changes made for recomposition. Through the leadership and coordination of the team, the changes were effectively executed with minimal interruption to the building's occupants. Mr. Speaker, the facilities management team is another example of a small unit that is delivering a big impact. The team is accountable for the supervision, operations, and maintenance of 9 government-owned properties. These include 7 community centers, the environmental center, and the government administration building. In 2019, Mr. Speaker, the department staff earned 5 of the 12 Chief Officer Awards for the year. This is a remarkable achievement and an indication of the passion with which the team members execute their duties and responsibilities. Turning now, Mr. Speaker, to the Department of Vehicle and Driver's Licensing. In the financial period under review, steps were taken to improve the quality of services provided to the customers. In 2019, the DVDL staff processed some 61,883 vehicle licenses renewals and over 11,350 driver's license renewals, and facilitated the booking of 9,762 appointments for written tests. Work continued under the electronic vehicle registration system with the replating of over 25,000 vehicles, allowing a significant number of users to renew their vehicles online. The new electronic vehicle registration system will be a critical enabler to more efficiently serve the public and to improve the registration and insurance compliance on our roads. Mr. Speaker, last year the government offered an amnesty which provided a waiver of fees for persons who accrued a backlog for unlicensed vehicles. It was also aimed at reducing the number of derelict and abandoned vehicles across the islands. Over 8,000 vehicle owners benefited from the amnesty, and of that number, Mr. Speaker, 4,655 vehicles with expired registration were relicensed, 2,523 vehicle registrations were suspended, and 823 vehicles were voluntarily terminated from the registrar. The amnesty assisted in the purging of the vehicle registration system, reducing the numbers from 74,000 as at 2015 to just 45,659 at the close of 2019. Mr. Speaker, great strides were made at the Department of Vehicle and Equipment Services with the opening of the 2-story, 8,734 square foot administration building. This was a major priority for the government as we seek to provide a safe, modern, and comfortable working environment for the hard-working members of that department. The new building, which is phase 1 of the redevelopment project, has now provided much-needed space to house employees, stores, and managed fleet services. And the enhanced facility also provides more vehicle bays, which will shorten repairs and increase turnabouts. We are reaping the benefits of inventory management and control, Mr. Speaker, which we anticipate will lead to reduced capital expenditure for the department, ministry, and ultimately the government. Mr. Speaker, last year I had the distinct pleasure of visiting the DVES and meeting with the mechanics who were being trained in electric vehicle services and safety. This was the first in a series of training being provided by the government in preparation for our plan to convert 30% of our fleet to energy-efficient vehicles by the year 2027. After completion of phase 2 of the DVES's redevelopment plan, these competent mechanics will be able to put their training to good use in a modern, state-of-the-art service bay. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the management and staff of the DVES for including the National Energy Policy as an important part of their strategic goals for 2020-2021. Mr. Speaker, please permit me to speak on the works of the Public Works Department. My ministry continued to invest in the future of young Caymanian men and women through the successful delivery of a Public Works apprenticeship program. Last year, construction progressed on a new facility which will enable this expansion of our apprenticeship program to have a capacity for 50 Caymanians in training, as well as customized classes for persons already working within the industry. It is expected that the new facility will officially open during the first quarter of 2021. Allied with the Public Works Department is the Major Projects Office, Mr. Speaker, which in 2019 continued with providing project management for several government projects. These included the John Gray High School, the Airport Redevelopment Project, the development of the Integrated Solid Waste Management System, and the Residential Mental Health Facility, which is now under construction. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the team was successful in completing the construction of Phase 1 of the Department of Equipment and Vehicle Services Administration building, which I spoke of earlier, and Phase 1 of the Heroes Square re-roofing works to the National Museum, and the re-roofing works in the National Museum. The project management team, in collaboration with facilities management, continues to work assiduously on completing various community parks, docks, and ramp remediation projects across the island. Mr. Speaker, just to mention a few ministerial projects which you will see in the detailed and annual report. We made much progress in fulfilling our commitment to the goals outlined in the National Energy Policy in 2019. I announced important duty incentives for clean energy transportation in support of the policy. The duty waiver applies to electric, hybrid, energy-efficient vehicles, electric motorcycles, and bicycles. The Ministry of CPI recognizes that the transportation sector has vast potential for energy efficiency and energy conservation. This initiative was a kickstart to assist our residents with switching to low-emissions vehicles for the wider social and environmental benefits to be gained from reducing our greenhouse gases and our dependence on petroleum. We are optimistic, Mr. Speaker, that the position taken by the government will encourage Caymanians to make choices that are sustainable and are aligned with both local and global sustainability. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry also continued its work with the National Housing Development Trust to implement policy recommendations in all of their newly built homes, and with the Department of Planning on building code requirements to simplify the process for renewable energy projects. To further reflect our commitment to the energy policy, the Ministry employed an energy policy coordinator to support the Ministry to deliver the strategic initiatives of the National Energy Policy. We also recently embarked on a public education campaign to get our community involved in good energy practices, and we anticipate you will hear more about the campaign in the coming weeks and months. Mr. Speaker, work has been ongoing on the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative. Last year, the team started Phase 1 upgrades at Heroes Square with the incorporation of a semicircular planters into the monuments and the placement of new statues at the site. Work on the Revitalization Initiative is continuing with the design and development of the existing infrastructure, which will include road redesigns and upgrades, along with a focus on the pedestrianizing of the central business district. The team is also looking at reducing parking requirements through new regulations, which will allow shared and off-site parking. Mr. Speaker, later this month, the Ministry will be piloting a hop-on, hop-off shuttle service in and around the Georgetown area, which will give people the option to move around the town easier and more comfortable. Moving on, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the National Community Enhancement NICE project had another successful year. The program was utilized to manage the local sargassum influx, which we experienced. Program participants cleared and collected over 200 tons of sargassum at the onset, and we extended the project for an additional 2 weeks to use a combination of manual labor and machinery to clear several beaches across the islands. Mr. Speaker, we were able to assess how the different sargassum management approaches worked, and now we have a better idea of what can work, how many people we need, and what types of equipment we require. This information will assist us to be more proactive in the years ahead, and should this problem arise again. During the year in review, Mr. Speaker, participants in the NICE program also provided support to the Mosquito Research and Control Unit in its cleanup efforts to halt the spread of the dengue fever. While the project is not part of the target response for dengue control, my ministry assisted MRCU by allowing crew members to join in the fight. In addition, the Department of Agriculture and the Agricultural Society facilitated the use of the NICE crew in the preparatory activities of the agricultural grounds leading up to the agricultural fair, which was held in February. Since the start of the project, NICE has ensured that Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment. The ministry will continue to partner with stakeholders in the public and private sector in delivering the program to help build stronger communities and support the most vulnerable in keeping with the government's broad outcomes. We are committed to continuing the NICE program, Mr. Speaker, and are finalizing plans for the upcoming project later this year. Before I submit this annual report, Mr. Speaker, I want to state that I am proud to be a part of the administration that encourages and supports the business community. Last year, we extended the Small Business Incentive Program, which since its inception have benefited more than 5,000 micro businesses and more than 700 small businesses. This has cost the government over $2.8 million. I also signed a memorandum of understanding with the Cayman Islands Small Business Association aimed at delivering a range of assistance, including grants and training. This partnership and the award of the grants, valued up to $5,000 to each recipient, underscore government's commitment to providing improved access to funding for small business owners. The ministry has strengthened its relationship with the business community through proactive interactions and supporting framework. We are confident that with the support of all stakeholders, we will continue on our mission to achieve our mutually shared goal of a strong and prosperous economy for the Cayman Islands. I want to further state, Mr. Speaker, that despite the challenges that we currently face as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, I am optimistic about the future of our islands. I'm optimistic about the programs and the initiatives that the ministry, its departments and agencies will complete over the next fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, I feel confident that this will make these Cayman Islands and its residents continue to grow in strength and continue to grow its resilience. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank honorable members of this House for their attention, and I encourage you to take the opportunity to peruse the report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
(2019) Portfolio of the Civil Service Annual Report for the period ended December 31st, 2019.
The Honorable the Deputy Governor.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the annual report of the portfolio of the Civil Service as of 31st of December 2019.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Is the member speaking?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, just briefly. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for offering me the opportunity to speak about the performance of the portfolio of the Civil Service for the year ending 31st of December 2019. Mr. Speaker, the portfolio of the Civil Service has three strategic areas of delivering: HR policy, public sector reform, and good governance. The portfolio is comprised of the Office of the Deputy Governor, a Policy Support Unit, the Civil Service College, the Management Support Unit, Strategic Reforms and Implementation Unit, Corporate HR, the National Archives, the Commission Secretariat, Internal Audit Services, the Elections Office, the Office of Education Standards, and the Legislative Assembly. It is charged with the delivery of our 5-year strategic plan with our vision for a world-class civil service. Since the launch of our 5-year strategic plan, civil servants have worked diligently to lay a foundation that will ensure that a world-class culture is embedded across the civil service. Similarly, significant work has been undertaken to progress the government's 8 broad strategic outcomes. Mr. Speaker, the important work carried out under both strategic initiatives will benefit civil servants, citizens, and visitors alike by improving the quality of services and life in the Cayman Islands. In 2019, we saw many noteworthy accomplishments in this respect, and I'm proud to share these with this honorable House. To move the civil service towards its goal of delivering an outstanding customer experience, in 2019, we trained 716 customer service ambassadors and 117 customer service champions through our newly established Customer Service Academy. To measure customer satisfaction, we continue to deploy our Happy or Not terminals across the civil service, which captured a total of 347,405 responses in 2019 and revealed an impressive overall Happy rating of 94%. These results include responses that were captured in departments where civil service priorities, such as protecting our borders, must be balanced with providing us outstanding customer service. Yet, despite having to manage this balance daily, our overall rating is only 6% shy of 100%. Mr. Speaker, of equal importance is the engagement and satisfaction of our staff. In 2019, a total of 2,976, or 74% of our staff, took the staff engagement survey, and we achieved an engagement index of 70%. This is on par or better than some of the best civil services in the world. However, the survey results that I'm most pleased to see is that 85% of survey participants said they were proud to be a civil servant. We will repeat the annual employment engagement survey starting next week, when we will invite every single member of our staff to share their experiences with working within the civil service. Every person has equal voice and helps to shape our internal priorities in the years ahead. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the civil service delivered world-class results in some key areas. In our efforts to improve the delivery of projects, the SRIU revised business case templates used by the Welsh government and throughout Europe to better fit the needs of the Cayman Islands government. Our templates, Mr. Speaker, were of such high quality that they were adopted by the Better Business Case program and are now published on the website of the Welsh government. As we enter year 3 of our 5-year strategic plan and continue to pursue our ambitious vision to be a world-class civil service, I take time to reflect on the accomplishments of 2019. Mr. Speaker, evidence of our foundational work across 5 goal areas of the strategic plan exists throughout the service. Under Goal 2 and 4, develop exceptional leadership and pursue excellent in talent development, the Civil Service College works to expand learning and development offers to supervisors and managers through the Institute of Leadership and Management, the ILM programs. Acknowledging that it is imperative to have a staff complement who are confident, competent, and professionally equipped for the task, the Civil Service College also facilitated the participation of over 800 employees in various workshops and seminars. Additionally, 290 employees completed or were in the process of completing leadership and management qualifications through the ILM. Sponsored by the Civil Service College, 22 employees graduated with an Associate of Arts in Public Administration. Another 20 employees earned certificates in public administration, and 3 civil servants completed their Bachelor of Arts degree at UCCI. In addition to classroom-based training, it is now commonplace for civil servants to be exposed to on-the-job training through secondments to other roles and to informal coaching and mentoring. More broadly, the civil service has developed and agreed terms of reference for heads of profession, which will support talent development across specific career paths. To date, approximately 50 civil servants have taken advantage of secondment opportunities both locally and overseas. This includes Internal Audit Services Caymanian Deputy Director, Ms. Lauren Knight, who completed a secondment with the UK Government Internal Audit Agency in August 2019 and commenced a secondment opportunity as the Acting Deputy Chief Officer for POCS in August 2019. Mr. Speaker, the creation and launch of our communications profession and a communications strategy, which consistently promotes the government's policy priorities across internal and external audiences, advances the objectives of Goal 4, foster effective communication. Additional work in this area included the introduction of communication cascades, including the distribution of 128 leader toolkits that allow leaders in every department to have the same message that I as Deputy Governor. That way, we are speaking with one voice within the organization. To further advance Goal 5, demonstrate excellence in governance practices, POCS delivered a draft anti-bullying, harassment, and discrimination policy. I'm happy to say that this policy was released this year. This policy sets the tone for expected behaviors in the workplace, outlines the responsibilities of employees, and provides a framework and guidance to aid in identifying, handling, reporting, and resolving alleged occurrences of any bullying, harassment, and discrimination. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, POCS delivered exceptional results in some key areas, all of which continue to move us forward to our bold vision. Brand standards which reflect CIG identity were developed and launched by the Cabinet Office. Additionally, we achieved 95% awareness of our vision to be a world-class civil service, surpassing the previous year's score of 94%, which further indicates that our efforts to communicate and brand our vision has been successful. As it relates to governance, the first ever Audit and Risk Assurance Committee for core government was established and held its first full meeting in September 2019. This fills a critical and long-standing gap in our governance arrangements. The committee provides an independent challenge to governance, risk management, and controls for the core government and helps to ensure that the risk and control framework is operating effectively. Mr. Speaker, as in previous years, we continue to recognize and celebrate to the Deputy Governor's Award Scheme those civil servants who deliver exemplary service. Additionally, POCS made lives better by promoting and participating in numerous community outreach programs which have helped raise funds for numerous local charities, including the Alex Panton Foundation, the Cayman Islands Crisis Center, and the Cayman Cayman Special Needs Foundation. While 2019 saw many successes, we are aware that there is more work ahead. In 2020, POCS has continued to progress programs and projects under the 5-year strategic plan. The Auditor General's opinion. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General issued an unqualified opinion on the financial position of the POCS as of 31st of December 2019. The Auditor General has stated that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the POCS for 2019. I would like to add my thanks again to the professional and dedicated team at POCS. They are continually rising to the challenge to make the lives of those we serve better. Mr. Speaker, as I have said, the POCS has three primary areas of focus: HR policy, public sector reform, and good governance. However, in truth, this team has demonstrated that they are willing and capable to adjust to whatever the organization requires. In the past year, Mr. Speaker, and you highlighted this earlier, whether this has meant running isolation facilities, processing arriving patients at the airport, coordinating the formation of a field hospital, establishing a call center to facilitate customer contacts when civil servants were working remotely, running the program management office for the gradual reopening of our border, redeploying civil servants to where they were most needed, churning out more than a dozen HR policy frameworks to allow for business continuity throughout the pandemic, or simply forming a makeshift honor guard outside of Foster's Food Fair to greet men and women in uniform, from nurses and doctors to police, prison, and CB officers who held the front line during COVID and were getting an hour to do their grocery shopping. We all owe those persons a great deal of gratitude, Mr. Speaker. This team does whatever is necessary to make people's lives better. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate Chief Officer Ms. Gloria McField-Nixon for all that she does. She often goes well above and beyond the call of duty. She certainly makes my life better. And the amazing team at POCS for another solid year of performance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Portfolio of Legal Affairs Annual Report 2019, Cayman Islands Government, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Attorney General.
The Honourable the Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek leave of the House to lay on this table the annual report for 2019 for the Portfolio of Legal Affairs.
Attorney General speaking.
Mr. Speaker, just very briefly, as I said, I present the annual report of the Portfolio of Legal Affairs for the year ending 31st of December 2019. The report, Mr. Speaker, having been signed off by the Auditor General and approval having been granted by Cabinet, and I therefore tabled it in accordance with the Public Management and Finance Law 2018 revision. Mr. Speaker, 2019 was a very interesting year for the portfolio, to say the least. On the litigation front, the Attorney General's Chambers was involved in various landmark and indeed high-profile matters that attracted considerable public interest and debate, matters, Mr. Speaker, that honourable members of this House are quite familiar with. Mr. Speaker, as well as providing legal advice, the Chambers, under the able guidance of our Solicitor General as well, also undertook training across government agencies, including, Mr. Speaker, the Department of Children and Family Services, Conditional Release Board, as well as other departments and agencies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Legislative Drafting Department once again managed a very heavy agenda, producing over 100 pieces of legislation, including a raft of changes to various financial services laws and regulations for anti-money laundering and other purposes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Law Revision Department continued work on its comprehensive database of all legislation in force in the islands at any time from the 1960s. I am happy to report that the database was completed earlier this year. As many of us, or many of you are aware, Mr. Speaker, or all members are aware, and has been an incredibly useful legal resource. And Mr. Speaker, I have arranged with the staff for one day next week during the lunch break to do a 45 minutes demonstration to honorable members of this House and the use of the new legislative website. Mr. Speaker, I think members would find it very useful. Of course, I've also spoken to the clerk about that. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Law Reform Commission submitted its final paper on litigation funding and published various papers on topics of interest, along with various recommendations, Mr. Speaker. And papers include mortgages and foreclosures and the decriminalization of suicide, as well as anti-bullying. Mr. Speaker, both the Anti-Money Laundering Unit and the Financial Reporting Authority remained immersed in work following the CFATF fourth round mutual evaluation report and the Cayman Islands. This included outreach and training across the private as well as the public sector and matters such as targeted financial sanctions, terrorist and proliferation financing, as well as cryptocurrency. Mr. Speaker, it also involved modernizing the existing IT infrastructure. The Anti-Money Laundering Unit was supported by a newly established national coordination team with criminal law and regulatory experience, which has also been working closely with other government agencies as well as private sector stakeholders, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Truman Button Law School enrolled some 80 students across its various programs and was revalidated by the University of Liverpool for another 5 years. This revalidation, Mr. Speaker, reinforces the quality legal education that the law school continues to provide locally. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the portfolio continued the legal development and training of Caymanians aspiring to become qualified lawyers with its article clerks program. In conclusion, sir, I would like to thank our Chief Officer, Mr. Rashma Sharma, the various heads of our various departments, and all the staff of the portfolio, Mr. Speaker, for their continuing hard work, their dedication, and of course, Mr. Speaker, their professionalism. I thank you.
The Government Minute, Government's response to the reports of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Auditor General, Government's use of outsourced services, June 2019. Government Minute, Government's response to the reports of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Auditor General, School Education in the Cayman Islands. Government Minute, the Government's response to the report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Auditor General, Customs in the Cayman Islands, May 2019. The Government Minute, Government's response to the reports of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Auditor General, the Government's use of consultants and temporary staff, February 2018. The Major Capital Projects follow-up, October 2017. And Works Planning and Management in the Cayman Islands Government, April 2018, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Deputy Governor.
The Honourable the Deputy Governor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Government Minutes, the Government's response to the report on the Standing Public Accounts Committee of the Auditors. Let me repeat that. The Government Minute, the Government response to the reports of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Auditor General for the Government's use of outsourced services, June 2019, for school education in the Cayman Islands, for customs in the Cayman Islands, May 2019, and the Government's response to the reports of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the reports of the Auditor General, the Government's use of consultants and temporary staff, February 2018, the Major Capital Projects follow-up, October 2017, Workforce Planning and Management in the Cayman Islands, Government, April 2018.
So ordered. Is the Honourable Deputy Governor speaking to any of these?
Yes, sir. I just have some brief remarks to cover all of the reports, sir, with your permission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as members will be aware, the government minute contains the responses and views of the government, along with the progress updates on the recommendations contained in the report of the Public Accounts Committee. I would like to encourage the members of this honorable House to review the government minutes that I have tabled this morning in more detail, as I believe these reports provide valuable updates on the work that has been undertaken by the government and the civil service in response to the findings of the Auditor General and the Public Accounts Committee. The work of the Office of the Auditor General is an essential tool to help us drive continuous improvement across the civil service and public service agencies. The recommendations of the Auditor General, combined with the recommendations from the Public Accounts Committee, provide key insights into opportunities for us to improve in a number of areas, including our processes, financial controls, and governance. In some instances, these recommendations provide additional support for and urgency to work that is already being undertaken, helping to reinforce our commitment to carry it to completion. In other instances, the recommendation of the Auditor General and the Public Accounts Committee help us to move work off the to-do list and into action. There are also times when these recommendations cause us to revisit how we are moving forward and refine or refocus our approach. Mr. Speaker, the government minutes that are prepared in response to the reports of the Auditor General and the Public Accounts Committee also present us with an opportunity to recognize progress that is being made, improvements that have been implemented, and efficiencies that have been achieved. While there are a number of recommendations that are still in works in progress, there are many that have made significant strides towards completion or have been implemented. As members review these reports, I believe they will see evidence of how we are taking action in response to the insights that have been provided to us by the Auditor General and Public Accounts Committee. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the Public Accounts Committee, the Auditor General, and my senior leadership team, and especially my Strategic Operations Officer and heads of department for the work they have done and the improvements they have made as a result of their combined efforts. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee for the work that they have done recently in rewarding civil servants and public servants for their high performance. And I do want them to see that we are taking their recommendations seriously and that we have a renewed approach to ensure that these government minutes are tabled in a timely manner. Thank you, sir.
2018 Annual Report, May 2020, off-reg, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Employment, Border Control, Community Affairs, International Trade, Investment, Aviation, and Maritime Affairs.
The Honourable Premier just had to step out for a minute. Can we just give him a chance to get back into the chamber? Can we just move to the next one, Clark?
Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs, Cayman Islands Government 2019 Annual Report, 1st of January 2019 to the 31st of December 2019. Government of the Cayman Islands, Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs, financial statements for the year ending 31st of December 2019, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Financial Services and Home Affairs.
The Honourable Minister of Financial Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move or to table the 2019 annual report and the financial statements for the year ended 31st December 2019 for the Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking to this report?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I touch briefly on the annual report itself, let me take this opportunity, as other colleagues have done, to offer my sincere thanks and gratitude for everyone that has worked so hard and tireless in the efforts to keep us safe here in the Cayman Islands during what is acknowledged by all to be probably the most unprecedented period of our history on so many levels, but in particular, speaking about the global COVID-19 pandemic. And Mr. Speaker, the team and the departments that fall within or under the Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs have certainly been at the forefront in many respects, and so I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly thank them in this forum as well. Speaking specifically as it relates to the Home Affairs departments, Mr. Speaker, as you know, the Hazard Management Cayman Islands has played an integral, crucial role and has taken on a huge burden and huge coordination and operational responsibility from the very beginning as it relates to the early triggering and mobilization and coordination of the National Emergency Operations Center that the country triggered very, very early in the then new year 2019 when we realized what was transpiring around us. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think as a country we owe a debt of gratitude to the director of the Hazard Management Cayman Islands, Ms. Danielle Coleman, and her team, as well as all of those civil servants who were basically co-opted to be a part of the NEOC process and helping to support in earnest the response mechanisms that the country employed and engaged efficiently once the government made our respective wishes and directives known. Mr. Speaker, a big part of that was and again coordinated in large part by the members of the Home Affairs team, was the management of the isolation facility, the government-approved isolation facility, which continues to this day, as I understand, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to making sure that those government-approved facilities were properly supervised and supported with logistical tasks, health-related tasks from the very get-go. And so we also owe a deep gratitude to all those who are involved in putting themselves on the line, oftentimes at risk to their own health and family life. And we owe certainly a debt of gratitude to all of those involved and still involved in operating and managing those isolation facilities. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Fire Services Department and staff have certainly stepped up, as they always do in times of need and crisis, and the fact that they have put on and shown the additional security support lended to the process during the heightened times of security concerns, in addition to carrying out their everyday responsibilities. And Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, that the country dealt with two major landfill fires weeks leading up to the global pandemic, but also there was a flare-up during the pandemic itself. And so members of the Cayman Islands Fire Service should really be commended for all that they do to ensure that our health, welfare, safety, and security from those incidents that could become life-threatening. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Public Services and Communication, 911, they showed and they continue to show consistent and exemplary monitoring and support. Mr. Speaker, the 911 is often, I wouldn't say forgotten, but often not recognized for the real support that they offer, that they provide when we talk about first responders, because 911 and the staff at 911 really are the first of the first responders. They're the ones that take the calls. They're the ones to help to dispatch and deploy the relevant other first responders to the scene of whatever the assistance needs to be rendered. So we want to pay special thanks to the work that they do and the integral role that they play in supporting the now self-isolation system, the geo-tracking system. 911 is integral in ensuring that that system is operational and effective. Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty's Cayman Island Prison Service, they, in addition to many other departments, they quickly and efficiently triggered their COVID-19 contingency plan to ensure that the welfare and health and safety of both inmates and staff alike were given priority, and they continue to do so under challenging physical conditions, to say the least. And so we want to thank members of the prison services for ensuring, as I said, that the safety, security, but also ongoing meaningful activities take place during this time. Mr. Speaker, the final department under the Home Affairs umbrella is that of the Department of Community Rehabilitation. And Mr. Speaker, although the requirements as a country as a whole to shelter in place did provide some logistical challenges with respect to supporting their clients, the members of this department did the best that they could with respect to supporting clients remotely during those times. And again, it shows the ever-present commitment of the department to ensure that they provide the safety and security measures and support to the community at large, even during these very challenging conditions. Mr. Speaker, as with the Home Affairs departments, the Department of Financial Services and the various departments that fall under financial services have continued to work tireless and innovatively throughout the entire process to ensure that the support offered to the financial services industry was uninterrupted. As we know, during this time where our tourism industry has been hit so hard, financial services became really the lifeline and the lifeblood of the economy. And so the members of the financial services infrastructure really did step up and went above and beyond what was already a very frantic and a pace of work and dedication. So we want to say a big thank you to all of those involved. In particular, the Department of Financial Services and Policy and Legislation continued in their very active engagement initiatives internationally with the EU, with the OECD, with all of the entities in which they have to continue to engage in a remote fashion, often having many calls and Zoom meetings at all hours of the wee hours of the morning, just to ensure that the jurisdiction maintain that active engagement and involvement, as we always strive to do. They also were very adamant about ensuring that the relevant domestic consultative processes continued with respect to the volumes and volumes of legislation which the ministry, in particular, it was responsible for promulgating and bringing to this honourable House, even during the pandemic, as we sat on several occasions. On each of those occasions, I was able to present legislation on behalf of the government that was, by and large, promulgated, as I said, by the work of the Department of Financial Services, Policy and Legislation. So we want to say thank you for their dedication in continuing to ensure that the jurisdiction, that we do all that we needed to do and continue to do to meet and in some cases exceed the various international standards to which the Cayman Islands is measured against and held to. The Department of International Tax Cooperation, Mr. Speaker, during this time also continued in their efforts to implement and roll out the various IT and other operational enhancements to support their ongoing tax information collection and exchange mechanisms, to which the jurisdiction is a party to through, again, the various international agreements. And the operationalization, in particular, of the economic substance regime continued without a hitch, and the department was able to continue to actively recruit in an effort which the government had recognized that there needed to be significant enhancement of that department, and they were we're able to bring on persons remotely to support the work, the vital work that the jurisdiction has to do in order to remain compliant in that regard. Mr. Speaker, General Registry as really the backbone of the infrastructure in many respects for the financial services machinery here in the Cayman Islands. They had to swiftly transition to working remotely and to try to create as best as possible. There's always hitches and glitches, Mr. Speaker, but I think the work of the General Registry should be recognized in trying to create a business as usual, as much as possible experience within or with limited interruption in their business continuity. And where there were obstacles, legislative or otherwise, the ministry moved very quickly to work with General Registry to try to create either workarounds or amendments to various pieces of legislation. And I remind this House, of course, about the birth registration amendment that came earlier on. I believe it was May, when the pandemic was at its height here in Cayman, or at least the preparations and what we did as a jurisdiction. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to specifically highlight and thank each of the members of those respective departments for the role that they played in ensuring that as a country we continue to weather the storm and in some areas continue to thrive in spite of the storm. And it goes to show that as a jurisdiction we are certainly, we have been, and even more so, prepared to be resilient in the face of many, many obstacles that we have overcome. And suffice it to say, there will be continuing challenges ahead. But Mr. Speaker, turning now to the annual report of 2019 annual report and financial statements. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to present the annual report for the Ministry of Financial Services and Home Affairs, as this report goes beyond the details outlined in the financial statements and provides details into the activities and accomplishments for the 2019 financial year. And Mr. Speaker, focusing first on the work of financial services, the work of my ministry has concentrated on two significant areas of focus. The first is the continued commitment to international standards to keep pace and with global regulatory requirements via enhancements of existing legislation and the development of new ones. Mr. Speaker, the second area of focus is engagement, both with key local and international stakeholders to promote the continuity of our financial services industry. Mr. Speaker, key highlights of the accomplishments and activities of the financial services during the 2019 year are as follows. The OECD Center for Tax Policy and Administration Director Pascal Santamans and the OECD's Head of Unit for Harmful Tax Practices, Melissa De Jong, met with the senior government officials and private sector members during their visit, a visit early in the new year in January of 2019, having had extensive meetings with various regulators, policymakers, as well as private sector individuals. And they were very complimentary, praising Cayman's tax-neutral regime as being not harmful and meeting all of the economic substance requirements as set out by the OECD. And Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that in June of 2019, the OECD actually gave Cayman its highest designation, that being, quote, not harmful, end quote, as it relates to the economic substance regime when we were assessed. And so certainly we have been recognized as, for the efforts that we've taken as it relates to having sound tax good governance regimes. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the recognition and engagement with the OECD's Center for Tax Policy and Administration, myself, along with members of my team in the ministry, traveled to Washington, D.C. To continue our efforts in engaging with members of Capitol Hill. We met with the Deputy Treasury Secretary, Mr. Justin Muzinich, who is the right-hand man to this Treasury Secretary, that being Steve Mnuchin. And so we were able to engage directly with the likes of himself, with many U.S. senators, including Tim Scott from South Carolina, the Republican senator in South Carolina, many members of congressional staff, and other key federal agency officials and policymakers to essentially help to educate them about Cayman's tax good governance system, as well as the work we're doing and what we have in place with respect to our AML and CFT regimes. And so by having those direct engagements, Mr. Speaker, we have seen over the years the change in the language used to describe the Cayman Islands in one of the key reports that is published by the State Department, being the INCSAR report. And forgive me, Mr. Speaker, the actual definition eludes me right now, but it's to do with their narcotics and trafficking report as it relates to jurisdictions and their potential vulnerabilities with respect to the U.S. efforts. And it's a report that is produced annually. And the section on Cayman, if you go back several years ago to what is being reported today, it is very clear that these ongoing engagements have made an effort, because we have been able to actually help to inform them and provide them with proof points of what we've done as a jurisdiction to really enhance and strengthen our regimes. And the importance of this report is that it's reported to Congress on an annual basis. So the key policymakers in the U.S. not only get this report, but they're also hopefully better informed with what we do as a jurisdiction versus what they may hear in various media and other forums. Mr. Speaker, the Department of International Tax Cooperation, as I said, began its program activities to effectively implement the legal, administrative, and IT components of the International Tax Cooperation Economic Substance Law 2018. And Mr. Speaker, this legislation is obviously was a game changer when we brought it in December 2017, but we've seen and we hear even from private sector up until most recently. I spoke at two key funds forums, the Game Ops as well as the AMA Global Investment Forum, and we hear that many other players in the financial services industry, investment managers, family offices, many areas, many individuals and many operations are looking to Cayman as a potential jurisdiction for not only doing business, but actually establishing or enhancing their physical presence here in the Cayman Islands. And so despite the fears that many had with respect to moving and creating this economic substance regime, the government and the country as a whole is actually seeing positive movements, and the numbers as it relates to the actual strength of the financial services industry is still quite strong, and 2019 proved to be as robust, if not more robust in some areas. And so this obviously is a positive indication that the Cayman Islands is still seen as a sought after, if not the sought after jurisdiction for financial services in many of its sectors. Mr. Speaker, the General Registry made names of directors and their alternates of any company incorporated in the Cayman Islands available for inspection. This information is now available in addition to other basic company information that has been available for public searches since the 1960s. The initiative was launched in response to the latest Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, or CFATF, peer reviews in the Cayman Islands. And again, Mr. Speaker, this is just another testament of Cayman's willingness to adopt the global standards as they continue to evolve. Cayman has continued to evolve with them, and no doubt we will continue to evolve into the future. And so now the ability to search for directors and alternates of a company is part and parcel of what is available at General Registry for a fee, of course, and under the conditions set by General Registry. And this is in keeping with what was recommended from the AML CFT best practices position of the FATF. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Intellectual Property Office, it's a unit within General Registry, worked with the United States government enforcement agencies to stage regional intellectual property training in the Cayman Islands. And the Cayman Islands Intellectual Property Office coordinated the enforcement training through the Homeland Security Investigations Division. And Mr. Speaker, this was a real coup for the jurisdiction in the sense that it shows the strength and the trust that the United States government enforcement agencies, as it relates to intellectual property, has in the jurisdiction, and us being leaders in this regard. We, as this House would know, during this administration and during the previous administration, we've brought some very robust intellectual property laws to protect people's property in all of its forms in this area, and the most recent being the design rights law that was brought forward by myself as minister, and that of course benefits our own local artisans as well from having their designs encroached upon. So the work of this office continues to be very recognized globally, or in this case by the United States government agencies, but also regionally, as this enforcement training hosted persons from all over the region, and including all the different departments locally that are involved in the enforcement of those various pieces of legislation. Mr. Speaker, turning now to home affairs, there was a concerted effort to prioritize many improvements to the national security and public safety measures, such as increasing human capital and the jurisdiction's ability to address and proactively prepare for natural disasters. Some of the key accomplishments and activities of the home affairs agencies during the year are as follows. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands government applied to join the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, or CEDIMA, which is a regional intergovernmental agency for disaster management with CARICOM, which offers a wide range of services in participating states, a number of which will be significant benefit for the Cayman Islands. And I'm pleased to advise that the application for membership was actually approved on the 28th of August of this year. And as the public and members of this House may be aware, we have already benefited from our relationship with CEDIMA by having donations of a number of COVID-related items to the jurisdiction in helping prepare the jurisdiction to combat the adverse effects that they may have as it relates to PPE and otherwise. So this relationship we see as being beneficial, mutually beneficial for the country as well as for the region as a whole. Mr. Speaker, there were amendments that were made to the Disaster Preparedness and Hazard Management Law 2016 to make provision for sudden disasters by the establishment in law of a National Disaster Fund. The principal law was also amended, Mr. Speaker, to make provision for changes in the manner in which broadcasts are to be made in times of national emergency. And Mr. Speaker, even though we've had a National Disaster Fund to some degree for a number of years, it was actually established in law in 2019, and therefore, moving forward, there is a set formula for funds to be allocated to that fund on an annual basis. And obviously, Mr. Speaker, we enhanced the broadcast interrupt system for sudden onset disasters or sudden onset incidents that the kind of traditional communications wouldn't suffice. And this is still a work in progress, Mr. Speaker, but during the 2019 year, the kind of simultaneous radio interrupt system did come online for the jurisdiction. Mr. Speaker, under the oversight of the Department of Public Safety Communications, or 911, as it's commonly known, as the country's new interoperable communication system became fully operational across the islands. Mr. Speaker, this upgraded the new and modern Motorola P25 public safety radio communication system creates an integrated public safety radio system so that all users are on a common platform, and it enables the greater interagency collaboration as these entities can talk to each other in a much more efficient manner, in a way that allows them to respond more effectively and efficiently. And as we know, Mr. Speaker, a matter of minutes can save lives. So as a jurisdiction, we certainly are better prepared to respond to these type of life-threatening situations, and making sure that all of our agencies are in a much better position to talk to one another. Mr. Speaker, within the Cayman Islands Fire Services, there were 3 Caymanians that were appointed as the new divisional managers for the Cayman Islands Fire Service, and the interim fire chief officer took up posts after what I understand from the chief officer was a challenging and thorough selection and recruitment process. So, Mr. Speaker, this goes to the fire services commitment to training up and promoting their staff and providing those opportunities. And if you were to speak to any of those 3 deputies, Mr. Speaker, you will hear how they are very thankful for the experience and the opportunity and the growth that the fire service is undergoing at this stage. And so, Mr. Speaker, we wanted to just recognize those 3 Caymanians who have achieved that position, and all of those who are also training. We have a group that I think this government has invested in at least 2, if not 3. I think this is the 3rd that we're going to soon see passing out as new fire officers are having finished their training. Again, to invest in what has been a legacy issue at the fire service, that being lack of staff and shortage of coverage of overtime. So over this administration, we certainly as a government have invested in finding the funds available, and of course the aspects of recruitment, etc., falls within the purview of the Deputy Governor and the auspices of the Chief Officer. But as a government, we continue to support the efforts of the fire service in that regard. And Mr. Speaker, the prison service delivered a number of notable developments as well, including the establishment of the enhanced reintegration unit for up to 21 low-risk prisoners who are engaged with community placements as part of their release plans. Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty's Prison Service, as we all know, the challenges that they face from a physical plant situation, they were still very innovative in creating this enhanced reintegration unit for the 21 low-risk prisoners to allow, and to best utilize capacity within the prison, but also giving these individuals an opportunity to create more of an environment that they'll have to get used to when they reintegrate into the community. So the aspects of rehabilitation is also being built into the program aspects of what is being delivered at the prison. And there were 6 new recruits in 2019 to Her Majesty's Prison Service following an extensive recruitment drive earlier in the year, with almost 400 applicants taking part in the process. And finally, Mr. Speaker, with respect to the Department of Community Rehabilitation, during 2019, they saw the policies and procedures drafted for a new service, that being the intensive supervision services. And by the second quarter, the team was fully functioning with 3 probation officers assigned to the team that now provides tremendous support across the department to high-risk and high-need clients with frequent contacts, community supervision, and in-office supervision sessions. Mr. Speaker, through the budget process, it is clear that this government continues to support the work of the various home affairs departments and the policy objectives that mean being promoting safety, security, and responsiveness of the community in a timely manner and in an efficient manner, and in a manner that respects the safety of the officers that work in these relevant departments as well. So as a government, we continue to invest heavily in that overall policy objective of creating safer communities. Turning now, Mr. Speaker, to the financial statements. The audited financial statements just tabled comprise of the Statement of Financial Position, Statement of Financial Performance, the Statement of Changes in Net Worth, Statement of Cash Flows, and the notes to the financial statements. Mr. Speaker, the statement of financial performance will show that the total revenue earned by the ministry was $52.7 million. Total expenses were $52.1 million during the 2019 financial year, and the surplus for the period was $0.6 million. The ministry ended the 2019 financial year with $57.3 million in total assets, $7.2 million in total liabilities, and a total net surplus of $50.1 million. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General issued an unqualified opinion on the financial statements of the ministry for the year ended 31st December 2019. Thank you.
(2018) Annual Report, May 2020, off reg, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Premier.
Honorable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the 2018 Annual Report of OFREG, which includes the financial statements for that year.
So ordered. Is the Premier speaking?
Very briefly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the report, as I've indicated, is 2 years old, so I'm not going to go through all of the achievements. This is the 2018 annual report for the Utility Regulation and Competition Office of the Cayman Islands, known as OFREG. As I said, it includes the financial statements for that year. The office's financial and operational year commenced on the 1st of January and ended 31st December 2018. The financial statements in this report have been independently audited pursuant to the Utility Regulation and Competition Law 2018 revision and the Public Management and Finance Law 2018 revision. The report is compliant with core government reporting requirements outlined in Section 52 of the Public Management and Finance Law and Section 43 of the Utility Regulation and Competition Law. Mr. Speaker, I am happy to say that the financial statements contain an unqualified opinion.
Cayman Islands Government Plan and Estimates. First supplementary plan and estimates for the financial year, 1st of January 2020 to the 31st of December 2020, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honourable the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the first 2020 supplementary plan and estimates for the Government of the Cayman Islands for its financial year ending the 31st of December 2020.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking there too?
Very briefly, Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 67.1, the 2020 Supplementary Plan and Estimates document that has just been laid now stands referred to Finance Committee. As the estimates will be considered in Finance Committee at the conclusion of the second reading of the associated Supplementary Appropriation Bill that will be further down on the order paper, I wish to make only brief remarks with respect to the document. Mr. Speaker, the 2020 Supplementary Plan and Estimates document is structured in the following way. Section A of the document shows, in respect of the specific appropriations being changed, the following information: the amount of the original approved appropriation for a particular budget item, the amount of the supplementary appropriation proposed for the particular budget item, and the revised appropriation amount for the particular budget item. Section B of the document contains the proposed changes to the appropriation law for the financial year ending 31st of December 2020, and that appropriation law was approved by the Legislative Assembly in December 2019. And Section C of the document shows the unaudited forecast financial statements for the financial year ending 31st of December 2020. Mr. Speaker, honourable members should use the supplementary plan and estimates as a document that provides more information to each of the items in the schedule to the supplementary appropriation bill for the 2020 financial year That bill will appear further down on the order paper. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Office of the Auditor General, Cayman Islands Annual Report, 31st of December 2019, providing value to the people of the Cayman Islands. To be laid on the table by the elected member for Northside, Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee.
The elected member for Northside.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave of the House to lay on the floor of this honorable House the annual report, 31st of December 2019, from the Office of the Auditor General.
So ordered. Is the member speaking there too?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I need to apologize to the Office of the Auditor General for the delay in tabling this report. We have had it for some time. And during the year 2019, the Office of the Auditor General developed 4 strategic objectives. 1, strengthening the accountability, transparency, integrity, and delivery of public services through high-quality audits. 2, demonstrating ongoing relevance to the people of the Cayman Islands, the Legislative Assembly, and other stakeholders. 3, encouraging improvement through leading by example and continuously developing our people. The new 5-year strategy builds on growing maturity of the Audit Office of the government and its financial management and reporting. The aim of the office is to be recognized as one of the leading small audit offices in the world, and 2019 saw their reputation continue to grow within Cayman, the wider Caribbean, and internationally. 2019 was another year of improvement in public service, financial management, and reporting, with no entities to date having received a qualification on their 2018 financial statements. Performance of the financial audit work continued to contribute to the many improvements in the public service. For example, 2019 saw the introduction of a core government audit and risk assurance committee and the early development of a core risk management framework, both of which should help the government's management of risk and governance and result in better value for money from government spending going forward. Regionally, the Audit Office in the Cayman Islands continues to participate in the Caribbean Auditors General Association and the local Auditor General serves on the Executive Committee, and they have been particularly helpful to the governments of Montserrat and Turks and Caicos. In fact, a member of the audit staff in the Cayman Islands, Sandra Malcolm Stevens, secured the position of Auditor General during 2019 in the Turks and Caicos Audit Office. The departure of the Deputy Auditor General, Mr. Harrison, gave the opportunity to restructure the Audit Office into 2 deputies, one responsible for the financial audits of government and the other responsible for value for money audits. The Auditor General Office continues to deliver exemplary service to the people of this country, and I take the opportunity to congratulate them on their performance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The House will suspend now for the lunch break. We will resume at 2 p.m. 2 p.m.